The second video in Chapter 11, Informative Speaking, deals with 5 goals of informative speaking. So we've already looked at differentiating between informative, persuasive, and entertainment goals. We've looked at types of informative speeches, and now we get to the 5 goals of informative speaking. So as an informative speaker, your goal is to present the truth, facts. You understand the importance of careful research to verify the information that you present. Your facts must be correct, they must be current, and so research is absolutely crucial. You need at least 3 sources for this informative speech. So do not rely solely on your own opinion. It's great to start with what you know, your passion and your interests, but you can't stop there. Find support from some other sources. So as you find support from other sources, be sure to question the source of information. Check to see if the person who's writing has appropriate credentials. Consider the timeliness of the information. Certainly do not use outdated information. It's no longer relevant. The second goal is to be objective, and that is to present information fairly in an unbiased manner. Again, a reminder, your goal is not to persuade, it's to present information. Take into account all perspectives. And when you do so, you create a far more complete picture for the audience so that they can come to a determination by themselves. When you avoid other perspectives or offering other perspectives, this creates bias, and it will certainly turn an informative speech into a persuasive one. Be sure to show trends. Trends put individual facts into a larger context, into perspective, as they clarify an idea within a larger context. The whole, that is the connection among ideas, gives each detail greater meaning. It's like trying to figure out a puzzle. You have the piece and you take it across and see what the larger looks like, and then you go back and place the piece where it needs to. By placing it in terms of a larger perspective, you see where it fits and how it fits. The third goal of informative speaking is to be clear. To be successful, your informative speech must communicate your ideas without any confusion. And so when your outline is not well organized, not only will you become frustrated and be more anxious, your audience will become frustrated, confused, and ultimately they'll miss your ideas and view you. Their perception of you is that you're an incompetent speaker. Be sure to define unfamiliar terms and concepts, especially technical jargon. So there are 2 types of definitions. Basically, you have an operational definition. They specify how you can see this in action. How do you measure violence? What does that look like in action? Or definition through examples, and these are excellent. Helps the audience understand a complex concept by giving the audience a for example or a for instance. Number 3, which we just talked about, and that is be clear, and that is carefully organize your message. And you do this by finding an organizational pattern. So the pattern for the first speech, the Who Am I Really speech, was a metaphorical, right? Now you need to find a pattern that will fit, and we've looked at these. The pattern must fit your specific purpose in terms of what you want your audience to do at the end of the day. Descriptive speeches are often arranged in spatial, topical, or a chronological pattern. Speeches of demonstration often use spatial, chronological, and cause effect or problem solution patterns. And then speeches of explanation are frequently arranged chronologically. As you can tell, chronologically is probably one of the key ones, or cause or effect or problem solution. If it doesn't fit any of these, then it is what we refer to as a topical pattern. The 4th goal of informative speaking is to be meaningful. A meaningful, informative message focuses on what matters to the audience as well as to the speaker. So you need to relate your material, your information, your ideas to the interests, needs, beliefs, attitudes, values, and behaviors of your audience. Consider the setting. Settings tell you the reason the audience has gathered. Again, avoid information overload. Your goal is not to get it all in one sitting, but to communicate your message within the time frame as effectively as possible. Be conscious of the relationships among time, purpose, and your audience's ability to assimilate, to take in the information. So tie key points to stories, just like we did in the first speech, examples, anecdotes, and humor to maintain their attention. The fifth goal is to be memorable. This is if you are enthusiastic, genuine, and creative, you deliver your presentation in an exciting fashion, this will become a memorable speech. So be sure to use examples and humor, as we just spoke about. Nothing elicits interest more than a good story, a good example. And humorous stories are effective in helping the audience remember the material. Physically involve your audience if you can. Some occasions and settings and some speeches lend themselves to some type of audience participation. The next section deals with some guidelines for effective speaking, and let's go through that. First, consider your audience's needs and goals. The best informative speakers know what their listeners want to learn from their speech. And so be sure to make connections between your subject, what you are speaking, your topic, and your audience's daily needs, desires, and interests. This is where your survey comes in. It helps you to make that connection. Consider your audience's knowledge. How much do they know? You don't want to be boring by going over information they already know. At the same time, you don't want to confuse them with information that is too advanced for them. You want to capture their attention and interest immediately. You must convince your audience that your topic is interesting and relevant, and that is the reason to listen. Sustain your audience's attention and interest by being creative, vivid, and enthusiastic. You may want to change your pace in terms of your speaking rate to emphasize a point. Enthusiasm that is infectious and that is exciting and dynamic. Even to those who have no particular interest in your subject, enthusiasm is infectious. Be sure to cite your oral sources accurately. So you have to have some oral citations for the informative and persuasive speeches. At least one per main point. At the very least, one per main point. Don't just say, research states or a study was done. We need some particular, some specific. The audience appreciates the depths of research and increases your credibility, and you avoid the accusations of plagiarism. Signpost your ideas. The transitions do that for you. The preview does that for you. When you tell the audience exactly in the preview what your main points are, don't be vague here. The transitions tell I've spoken about this main point and now I'm going to speak about this main point. So signposting at the beginning of a speech, tell the audience how many main points you have and how many ideas you intend to support. Signpost during the speech acts as a transition because it keeps the audience informed as to where you have been and where you are going and where you are in your presentation. Relate the new with the familiar. Informative speeches should introduce new information in terms of what the audience already knows. So this is where you use metaphors, analogies, and similes as you compare things. That's very useful. Use repetition. They don't have the script, your manuscript in front of them. So you help your listeners by reinforcing your main points through summaries and paraphrasing, the preview, the transitions between the main points, and in the conclusion, the review of the thesis and main points. Be sure to offer interesting visuals. We talked about that in chapter 10. Your audience expects you to put effort into your presentation. And then consider how to respond to audience questions and distractions. When disruptions occur, do not ignore them. So, when fielding questions, develop the habit of doing 4 things in this order. Number 1, thank the questioner. Number 2, paraphrase the question, meaning put it in your own words. 3rd, answer the question briefly. And then 4th, ask the questioner if you have answered their question. So, for any question, you have 5 options. Answer it. Remember, I don't know is an answer. Bounce it back to the questioner. Well, that's interesting. How might you answer the question? Bounce it to the audience. I see. Does anyone have any helpful thoughts about this? Defer the question until later. Now, you and I would find this interesting, but it's outside the scope of my message today. Promise more answers later. I would really like to look further into that. May I get back to you later? So while questions may be expected, distractions are not. When random interruptions occur, do not ignore them. Call attention to this distraction. This allows you and the audience to focus on that one thing for a few seconds to get it out, and then you can get their attention back to you. You can't compete with the distraction. You will lose. And lastly, the effects of informative speaking. This is a longer video, my apologies. So the principles of ethical responsibility are similar for every speaker. As an individual speaker, you must regulate yourself. You have responsibilities to make sure that you've researched the information that you provide is accurate, that you are truthful and honest, and you're not trying to misinform. Calculated ambiguity is a speaker's planned effort to be vague, sketchy, and considerably abstract. And you should not be that in informative speech. All right? You should rely on credible sources and avoid ambiguity. That's the essence of Chapter 11, Informative Speaking.